Hello from Gardening at Dwensa here in Ireland, and you are very welcome to the August edition of A Year in the Life of a Border. So each month I go to this particular border here behind me, the green border, and we have a look at the plants that are looking good and the jobs that need to be done in that particular month. So come with me and let's have a look at the green border in August. Well, where do I even start? We had such a stormy and wet August that it was so impossible to do much in the garden at all. We had Storm Ellen, and quickly after that we had Storm Frances, and both of them wreaked havoc in the garden, taking off tree branches and bringing down tall things. And I was so afraid that this border here, that the Silphium at the back would be solid gone, but strangely, although it is really quite prostrate, it's that yellow one there, it's still around and I haven't cut it back, so I guess that was one small blessing. And of course there was torrential rain for a lot of the month, which meant that we didn't eat outdoors in the garden, not even once in the whole month of August, which is just absolute shocking. And now that all of that seems to have passed, touch wood, what we have is a very, very autumn nip in the air, and the garden has started talking of mellowness and autumn colours and just relaxing that very little bit. So with all of that in mind, let's have a look at the green border in August and see how it has done. Now, I will just prefix this by saying that I have done very little in this border in August. Normally, you might deadhead and you might weed, you might cut things back, you might stake things up, but the weather has just been just against me and I just kind of gave up at some stage. So yeah, you have to bear that in mind when having a look at the border. In other Augusts it would look better than it does today. Okay, so let's have a look at the border. And we'll start off by having a bit of a pan of the border just to get an idea of what's going on here. And again panning across, this time from a little bit lower down, and there's lots of movement going on here with the grasses that are kind of fluttering in the breeze. I guess the first thing I'm going to mention is the tall plants, and we do have one Silphium still standing up tall and proud, so we'll start off with that. And we have lots and lots of Silphium which have kind of tripped over the hoops that I put in place to support them and are lying prostrate across the other plants. Not great for the other plants, but it is giving us a little bit of colour in the mid-distance of this border, even though it's false because these plants really should be at the back. I don't know, can you see right there a big dahlia which is being totally smothered? And generally speaking, this is the kind of thing that happens when you don't actively manage a border. Plants do what they want to, and the strongest and thuggy-ish ones will overwhelm the other ones, or in this case, the ones that need support and don't have it. That yellow colour is very nice though when the sun hits it. And I don't know, can you see just over there? My fence is also leaning over, and this is as a result of some of the winds that we had. In front of the Silphium we have the Ligularia, which is that purple-leafed plant. And this is what you get if you don't deadhead them. And some people like this look. So the seed heads, they look a bit like a dishevelled dog that has been through the water, and I guess that's a pretty accurate description of what's happened here with the weather this month. Moving over here to the right, we see a couple of nice things, and I suppose the first thing to mention is the Echium there, which is the tall plant with kind of spiny leaves, and this will grow much taller and produce a spire of blue flowers hopefully next year. But before it does that, the foliage is really kind of exotic looking, from my part of the world anyway, and I'm very happy to have this in leaf at any time of the year. What else do we have here? We have, is it time to mention the guy on the right here, my Eucomis? I think it's time. So this is a Eucomis, or pineapple plant, and as the plant unfurls it looks very much like a pineapple, less so now when all of the flowers are open, but it is a very exotic thing and one that I'm very delighted to have gotten away with growing outdoors. Now, as you can see, I've supported the spike with a cage, a metal cage coated in plastic. That's that green hoopy thing round about there. And Eucomis generally tend to need supporting in my experience, which can be problematic because they have bulbs underneath the ground, and the last thing you want to do is to pierce one of those bulbs with the legs of your stake. So this plant has really quite pretty flowers and gives a very exotic look. And I think I just put up on the screen that the variety is pole-evansii. I'm not sure at all because it was bought as such, but I think it's something else entirely. I forgot to mention that last winter was the first time I chanced Eucomis in the ground, and I left them in situ and covered the plant with an upturned terracotta pot, and it seems to have done the trick. However, I will just say that last winter wasn't a particularly cold one, so we'll have to see how this goes longer term. But I'm going to leave the Eucomis here in the ground anyway. And just to the right of it here, you may see that there is a pretty salvia, and this is the one called Amistad, the one that is supposedly hardy outdoors in Ireland anyway, and that you saw me planting in this border not very long ago. Down here at the base of the Eucomis and further along in the border, we have the appearance of Colchicum, or winter crocuses. Now this particular one is double and it's called Waterlily, and they really are quite beautiful when they open fully, but they have one drawback, and the drawback is that they don't hold themselves upright very well with the disadvantage that they kind of flop around. These are bulbs, of course, and can be bought dry and planted in autumn, I think, and very soon then you will have your own blooms peeking up above the earth, and they really do make a pretty little statement at this time of year when you don't expect anything new and fresh and pretty coming up. Everything is beginning to look just a little bit tired. To the right we have Melanoselinum, so that's this bush here fluttering in the breeze, and next year that will produce pink umbelliferous flowers, I've no doubt about it. But what I want to show you really is just behind that the Eupatorium I grew from seed a long time ago. So this plant is commonly known as Joe pieweed, and I think its main claim to fame is that it grows very tall and it flowers late, which are both attractive things to have in certain border. It depends when you want your main season of flowering to be in a border, but if you're going for late, and there are lots of very pretty things you do for late flowering, then the Eupatorium is among one that you look for the back of the border. Now, yeah, it's not my favourite, I must tell you, but it does serve a purpose. And here's an unusual little plant which you might be forgiven for thinking is a dandelion, but it's not. So look at the foliage here, and it's got serrated edges to the foliage. And this is a plant that comes from the Azores Islands over there in the middle of the Atlantic Ocean. And it's one that I saw for the first time at June Blake's garden last autumn, and I got this plant from her. So if you have a big clump of this, it makes a really sunny statement at the front of a border, especially when the sun hits it. Really, really pretty. It doesn't look great when it's just like one plant here, as I have it, but hopefully this will clump up in time. Now we're standing to the right of the border, I guess, kind of behind the greenhouse, and just like taking a look down and panning up. In this corner here, past the Eupatorium, which is the plant on the left, and past Hydrangea Ayesha, which is that blue one there. And do you remember when we visited Helen Dillon's garden? She had Ayesha, but she had a pink one because she doesn't have acidic soil. So just a little note there. But can you see also we have some buds coming? We have an orange bud there from the dahlia, but also some hollyhocks. And here we have the first flower on the hollyhock I grew from seed that I bought at Tatton Court Plant Show last year. And you can see there are lots more buds coming. Now I think it was supposed to be double, and this is clearly single, so it's not what I wanted, not what I paid for, but I think it's pretty all the same. And I think I have a new space in my heart for single hollyhocks after having visited the Coakley garden there recently. They had the most gorgeous ones there. And over here in the tree stump, can you see down here? It's the Echium that's seeded in here that we spotted in the last video, and it's a little bit bigger and still reaching for the sky, so we'll see how far this gets. And here we have something a bit unusual. This is Baloskion. Yeah, you heard me right. It's a Restio relative from South Africa, and one that's hardy here in Ireland. I had it somewhere else in the garden first where it wasn't getting enough water, but it seems to be doing better here because, as you all know, once plants are established in my garden, they do not get additional watering. They have to make do. Now you might think it's too close to the Melanoselinum, but you have to remember that Melanoselinum will die after flowering, and then we will have space. So for the moment I think it's just kind of providing an umbrella-like protection. And before we leave the border, just a few words about collecting seed. Now if you're really neat and clip off your dead flowers, you're not going to have any seed, but it is something worth bearing in mind. So if you want to collect seed, don't be too tidy. And the trick to collecting seed is to check often. And to not be so dead set on collecting the seed that you collect something you know isn't viable. So with this likeness, for example, you can see that the seed heads is actually opening, and the seed, unless I'm very much mistaken, will just pour out. See that? And I just tip it like that, and this is when you want to be collecting seed. That is good seed that will germinate and do well. You can see it there in my hand. And another thing to bear in mind when looking for seed is that hybrids, even if they do produce seed, they won't come true, which means that you may well get something but it won't look like the parent. So if you want something that looks like the parent, choose species like this Salvia, for example, and collect seed from that. And I don't think this is ready yet. No, we've no seed pods. So why am I looking for seed, do I hear you ask? And well, it's simply that soon enough I hope to set up membership on the channel and offer people the chance to pay something like $5 a month for specialized videos. So these are videos that I wouldn't normally put on the channel because they are too specialized and nobody's going to watch them except the real plant nerds, the real aficionados. I hope to have several things on my membership, including free seeds. And this will be, of course, as stocks last and on a first come first serve basis. So at the moment I'm collecting seed in the garden. Looking at that border now really kind of pokes at the OCD in me. I want to go in there and cut back the Ligularia and deadhead the leucanthemum and do a little bit of weeding and all that kind of thing. But sometimes you can't get around to doing everything you want in the garden, and I think it's important to be able to let go. It's important to be able to enjoy what you have already, and if you don't look with a magnifying glass, it still has beauty, it still has charm, and especially when the sunshine hits it, it has a lot to offer. And that brings me to the end of this video about the green border in August, which I hope you found useful. And perhaps some of the plants that I've shown to you today you might be thinking about growing in your own garden, and perhaps this video will clinch that for you, or work the other way. You'll decide, no, actually that's not really going to work in the border that I have in mind. So anyway, I hope you'll check back soon for the September, well, not that soon, for the September year in the life of a border, and we'll see how these things are doing then. And in the meantime, I wish you much strength in your gardening endeavours, especially if you have had such a wet and horrible August as we have had here in Wexford. And I will see you on the next video. Bye!